Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Secretary Rubio, for being here. On March 21st, 2025, the State Department approved the revocation of a student visa for Rümeysa Öztürk, a Turkish citizen who is a graduate student at Tufts University, apparently simply for writing an op-ed. According to an internal State Department memo, you took this action under your discretionary authority to revoke visas, and soon after you revoked her visa, armed and masked plainclothes officers snatched Ms. Öztürk off the street and transported her to a prison in Louisiana. Mr. Secretary, do you really think that Ms. Öztürk's op-ed results in a foreign policy consequence for the United States?
I believe that case involves someone whose visa we never would have granted had we known ahead of time.
I'm not asking you that question. I'm asking you if you think an op-ed, but that's exactly, in fact, what happened. The State Department wrote a memo concluding that you did not have sufficient grounds to revoke Ms. Öztürk's visa. There was no evidence showing that she'd engaged in any activities were a threat to national security. And in fact, in May, a federal court ordered Ms. Öztürk's release from detention, noting that the sole basis for the government's detention appeared to be the fact that she co-authored this opinion piece in the Tufts newspaper in March of 2024. Where in the Constitution does it say that the Secretary of State can override the First Amendment protections of free speech? Is there a footnote that I missed somewhere?
There's no constitutional right to a student visa.
So, but is there a constitutional right? Does it say somewhere that Marco Rubio gets to determine which speech is appropriate and revoke student visas based on what you think constitutes free speech?
There's a statute that says the Secretary of State gets to determine whether someone is a threat. We deny visas every day all over the world.
Do you think that the Immigration and Nationality Act trumps the Constitution of the United States, Mr. Secretary?
Well, Congress can always change the law if you want, but I'm telling you,
Mr.
while I have the authority, I will
clear.
continue to revoke the visas of these people that come here to tear this country apart.
You said that, Mr. Secretary. Let me reclaim my time, because you are talking about revoking student visas based on what somebody says. And that means that you are trumping the legal Supreme Court, the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution of the United States.
You're about to see one of the boldest confrontations in Congress. Senator Marco Rubio just went head-to-head with pro-Hamas sympathizers, delivering a fiery defense of Israel that left the room stunned. The clash with Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal over a revoked student visa turned into a battle over free speech, national security, and America's stance with Israel. Stick with this video because the way it ends will leave you thinking. And before you dive in, make sure you click the subscribe button right now so you never miss these explosive moments.
Why did the administration, Mr. Rubio, why did the administration need to use masked, armed, unidentified agents to whisk somebody off the street and deny her counsel for almost 24 hours after her arrest?
Well, you'll have to ask the agencies that did that work. I'm not responsible for that. I'm responsible for revoking the visas of these people that come to tear this country
Rubio,
apart.
I'm talking about this particular case where you revoked the student visa of a Turkish citizen who was a graduate student who wrote an op-ed that you didn't like. And suddenly you allowed for masked men to whisk her off the street. And you have multiple jobs, apparently. You're the national security advisor as well. So don't tell me it's not your job who snatches her off the street.
We don't do the snatching, but I can tell you we do the visa revocations.
Let me ask you about the national security consequences of people, masked men on the streets, snatching people off the streets. If these are legitimate law enforcement agents carrying out proper arrests, why are they hiding their identities?
Because then radical crazies will try to hurt them.
So you think that U.S. agents who have almost always gone without face coverings, even when they're arresting some of the country's most dangerous criminals, suddenly have so much to fear from a graduate student who wrote an op-ed that they need to be masked? Is that
that law student was a guest in the United States on a student visa. No one's entitled to a student visa.
So you revoked her student visa based on an op-ed which trumps the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution.
Someone's coming up here to stir up problems on our campus. We're going to revoke their visa.
She didn't do any of that. She wrote an op-ed. Well, she wrote an op-ed, and I'm talking to you about her particular case.
That's her claims and your claims. Those are not the facts.
reclaiming my time, you revoked her student visa
Yes,
because
proudly.
she wrote an op-ed.
And
Would
we'll do
you
more. We're
revoke?
gonna do more of
I
them.
have another question for you. Would you revoke the visa of someone in the United States who published claims that, quote, Jews are an untrustworthy and dangerous group? Yes or no?
We will revoke the visa of anyone who's in this country as a guest
Are
who's
you
here to stir up
going to
trouble.
revoke the visa of somebody who made
Send me
that?
the case,
that,
I'll look at it.
that
I'm looking
statement?
to
Well,
get crazy people out of our
actually,
country.
it's not just about revoking.
Forward
You
to
actually,
revoking the
Secretary
visas of any
Rubio,
lunatics you
excuse
can
me,
identify.
reclaiming my time. Can you explain to me why the Trump administration granted refugee status to Charles Kleinhaus, the white Afrikaner who tweeted that exact statement that I just said? There's the case.
That's not a visa.
You granted that person
That's
to
a
enter
totally
the United
different process.
States.
That's someone that applied here through a totally different process.
Secretary Rubio,
student visas are a privilege.
Secretary
we deny
Rubio,
them all the time, and
you
we'll revoke them.
revoked
And
a visa based on an op-ed, and then you allowed for
Gentlelady's time
masked
has
men
expired.
to
that's your
snatch
claim. That's
somebody off
accurate. That's
the
your claim.
street.
Your
That's
time's
your claim.
expired.
That's your claim. That's not accurate.
Recognized ranking.
Golda Meir once said, "It took Moses 40 years to find the only place in the Middle East with no oil. But Israel's wealth lay not under the ground, but in its people, the Jewish people, exiles, pilgrims, and dreamers from around the world who made the desert bloom into a high-tech superpower. Israel accomplished this miracle not by abandoning its history and identity, but by embracing them. Sadly, some of Israel's neighbors have failed to appreciate how following Israel's example could have brought prosperity to the region. Instead, they chose war. They decided to impoverish their people in a futile effort to destroy Israel. They succeeded in the former, while failing in the latter. Anti-Semitism is the world's oldest bigotry, and given that we are all here today, it is also the world's most futile. Egyptian pharaohs, Roman emperors, Persian shahs, and Middle Eastern despots have sought to destroy the nation of Israel. Adolf Hitler dreamed of a world without Jews, an idea he shares with Hamas. Today, these regimes and empires have crumbled into dust, but Israel stands, and the Jewish people prosper. I pray for the day when the entire world will recognize the futility of anti-Semitism, when leaders will abandon self-destructive hatred and forge a new future in partnership with Israel by building on the Abraham Accords. Under President Trump's leadership, there are signs that the future may be closer than we dared dream. But only if we can overcome the futile, persistent evil of anti-Semitism can we reach that future.
You hear Jayapal pressing hard, accusing Rubio of violating the Constitution after revoking a Turkish student's visa for writing an op-ed. She frames it as a free speech issue, demanding answers. But then you hear Rubio fire back. A student visa isn't a right, it's a privilege. And when someone uses that privilege to promote division or dangerous ideologies, the visa gets revoked. The questions intensify. You see Jayapal challenge him about masked, armed agents arresting the student, asking why they had to cover their faces. Rubio responds that law enforcement officers protect their identities because radicals target them. The room heats up as Jayapal keeps pushing, but you watch Rubio hold the line, insisting his job is visa revocation, not the arrests. Then the debate shifts. Jayapal points to a case where a white South African with anti-Jewish rhetoric was granted refugee status. You notice Rubio shut it down immediately, explaining that a refugee case is nothing like a student visa. He stresses that anyone promoting anti-Semitism or hatred should expect consequences, no exceptions. At this point, the tone changes. By the end, you hear a message that couldn't be more direct. There is no compromise with evil. There is no middle ground with hate. The fight against anti-Semitism is one that must be won. And as you finish watching, you know exactly where Rubio stands, with Israel, with freedom, and against those who spread hate. If you believe in standing strong against hatred, go ahead and hit that like button, and don't forget to click subscribe.